development initiatives and emerging artists globally. And today we have the special privilege of hosting Gayle for her solo virtual exhibition. So thank you all so much for coming today. And I could not be more excited for today's event. So just to introduce Gayle. So Gayle Ebose uses the process of portrait painting to encapsulate the joys and mundanities of everyday Christian living in the 21st century. Her portraits serve as a way to preserve the testimony of how God sustains his people, transforms their character, and equips them for life as sojourners on earth. This inquiry places both Gayle and her subjects telling their story at the center as they navigate life's experiences through the body and skin they are in. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Gayle. Thank you so much, Gayle.
Hey, thank you, Joyce, for introducing me, and thank you for everybody coming. Really appreciative of you guys just taking the time out to just share space with me and to just kind of walk through my artwork. So I'm really appreciative of that. I kind of thought in terms of thinking about how does one do it like an online exhibition? No one really knows what that really looks like because it's kind of like a new space. So I kind of was thinking, what do I want people to think about when they see my work? What do I want them to see and to be experiencing? Because normally when we think about exhibitions, you're just like in person with the paintings and you might not necessarily have the artist with you. So I thought, okay, this is an opportunity because I'm here and it's a means for me to kind of use my voice to kind of just speak alongside the painting. So follow me as I kind of like just lead you through. One of the ways that I wanted to kind of frame this kind of 25 minutes is just thinking about think as if you're kind of walking alongside a sojourner, somebody who is kind of like documenting life and who is observing and perceiving things and then making notes, because that's kind of how I look at life, and that's the lens that I take. So yeah, Lindsay, you can move to the next slide. So I'm gonna like split this into like about 3 sections just so that people can kind of have something to be clinging on to whilst we're looking through the painting. So the first section, I'm going to be talking about in between spaces or in between moments. The second section, I'm going to be talking about divine within the mundane, and then I'll be talking about diversity and unity. So, okay, so round about here, I painted this in February of last year, and most of the paintings I'll be showing today will be based on paintings I painted all last year. And I was on an MA course at Camberwell College of Arts in London. And yeah, so this is a painting that really highlights what the course was in the sense that it stretched me. And this painting was made on an unstretched canvas, but it's kind of ironic because like this was a moment for me to be stretched and to kind of paint something that's like larger than life. With this painting, I was kind of inspired by Claudette Johnson, Sonia Boyce, and how they kind of make paintings or storytelling, but also larger than life. So I really wanted to kind of think through those things whilst I was making this painting, as well as 6 of the other paintings I'm going to show in this section. So just like a bit of background in terms of how I started. Initially, I kind of was a self-portrait painter. And I kind of think that I still am to some degree, in the sense that the people that I paint, they themselves are kind of as if it's like autobiographical in a sense, because we have shared experiences in the sense that our identities are kind of similar. We have certain anchoring things that unite us all as people. And it just kind of got me thinking about how, rather than being so introspective and thinking about my own self and my own life, how can I see myself in others and others see themselves in me, and use portraiture to kind of explain or kind of learn through that. I remember one crit that I had where one of the, it was kind of, the question was asked, like, why should we care? And it really made me think about, yeah, why should people care about my personal experiences? But then if other people can relate to those personal experiences, it makes it more tangible. So yeah, that was kind of one of the things I was thinking about. So with this portrait, this is of my friend Letitia, and this was at the basement of our church. And it, again, this is another painting that kind of took me out of my comfort zone. It was large, quite a big painting. And it kind of made me start to think about themes of the in-between again. So like with this portrait, she's kind of kind of smiling, kind of not, like the moment where I was about to take her photograph and then she kind of holds her head. But yeah, she's just average, she's just not average, but like just wearing like casual clothes, turtleneck and jeans and boots. And I really liked that look. But I think what kind of grabbed me most was the fact that she was kind of bearing something that was growing within her. And I think that kind of really struck me because it's very unsuspecting and you wouldn't know it on the first glance. But then, so when I after I painted this, I kind of reading into it, and then when I actually met her son, basically because she was pregnant at the time, I actually cried because I was like, wow, I had actually painted this baby without him knowing that, like, no one can, like, I didn't know, or no, he didn't know that I was painting him. And it's like, he is now alive and here with us. And it kind of just reminded me about like God and how he is, he's intimately aware and acknowledges life before it even comes to the earth. And that's something that I found really profound for me, because I was able to create this painting kind of representing a similar thing. So yeah, I kind of do explore those kind of things. I explore themes of motherhood. And I kind of was thinking during that time, because this is when lockdown then happened, and I was thinking, wow, there's so many mothers who were in a similar situation to Letitia, where they were pregnant during that time and they had to give birth during that time. So I was just kind of thinking about how they were able to cope. And yet, if you go to the next painting, you'll see my friend Gloria, and she, for me, kind of encompassed that whole serenity, that whole quietness of spirit, even in the midst of the turmoil and in the midst of the drama that was happening around on the earth. And again, this kind of highlights the in-between moment, the kind of anticipation for what's about to happen, and yet she's still, there's still like an anchoring, a centering about her and about her disposition. And again, it kind of did make me think just about how it's not only about self. She's bearing another child, but then she has to be kind of sane and okay because she's going to birth somebody else. But then also, even amidst of the crazy, she has to kind of keep herself like serene. And that's really what I appreciated about painting Gloria. So all of those six paintings were kind of just, actually 3 of them I painted in the studios. They were a lot more larger, and then these last 3 were painted from home. So Lindsay, you can move to the next one, please. Thank you. This final painting from this section is called Alabaster Jar Girl. And I think in just keeping with what I was learning in the first lockdown, I think a lot of people, it was novel to everybody. We hadn't experienced this thing before. I was learning lessons in terms of, well, actually, well, firstly, I was reading a scripture. This was in John 12, and it talks about a woman with perfume, or with the alabaster jar, and how she poured it on Jesus's feet. And for me, one of the things that struck out to me was the fact that the aroma filled the room. And it made me think about the symbolism of my life and my aura, and how that ought to fuel the room, or how it ought to fill the room, should I say, in terms of the fact that no one's used to being at home every single day, all day throughout the week kind of thing. It was a new thing. So I had to kind of think, okay, if I'm going to be at home with family, how do I want to live, and how do I want to present myself? And I think this painting was an example of me not using my own self as a muse. This was my friend, and it was a photo taken from her in Nigeria, of her in Nigeria. But it kind of embodied the ideas that I was thinking of. And something like, for example, the gold paint that I used for the background, that was kind of symbolizing the perfume and symbolizing the radiance of the perfume of how I want to kind of give myself off in my environment. Thanks, Lindsay. So this is the second section, and I kind of I called it Finding the Divine Within the Mundane, which I think kind of encompasses all my work in a sense. But I think with these paintings, I really began to start to see what I was trying to get at with finding the divine within the mundane. So I use it to kind of describe like moments of light. So Lindsay, you can change the screen, please. Thank you. So for example, this painting, this is of my friend Giselle. And so we'd been wanting to meet up ages, like we'd been putting it off all the time. And the pandemic and having this moment was a good opportunity for us to kind of share space with one another. And though it wasn't physical, it was over FaceTime. It was just an opportunity for us to kind of touch base, check in, like how's it going, how are things, and just talk more widely about things, about life, about what was going on in the midst of the pandemic. And these were kind of conversations I was beginning to have with not only Giselle, but with other other people, sorry. And whilst I would be having these conversations, I would be painting them. So yeah, you can just flick through these, Lindsay. Yeah, so these were kind of the results that I was getting. So some of them would be mums that are just kind of looking after their children. Quite a lot of them already were doing that before the pandemic anyway. So they were kind of used to that. Others were working women having to adjust to working from home. This portrait, for example, Lola, she was also working, painting at the time, writing at the time whilst I was painting. So it was just opportunities for us to use time to kind of creatively work alongside one another. So yeah, just these different opportunities for us to kind of share what was going on with us. And this painting, for example, I think, so I asked, I did a poll on Instagram some weeks back, maybe last week or the week before. You can go back, Lindsay, to the former painting. Thank you, no worries. Yeah, so I did a poll asking just if anyone can ask questions, etc. And one of the things was which painting is your favorite? And I don't know if it's like a taboo thing whether artists should say what portraits are their favorite or not, but I don't mind saying which one's my favorite. I think this one's my favorite, especially from this series. And I'll say why. I think it's mainly because because of how the painting came together, prior to us sitting, Manta and I, we'd only spoken or said hi, like from across the pews, for example. That was when we'd be able to speak with one another. So I think her painting kind of really helped me see that it's not just about knowing the person beforehand to help me paint them, but it's also learning them as I'm painting them. And it's through the conversation that I'm beginning to kind of see her light, or see who she is kind of come into the fore based on conversation. So yeah, that was a really great moment for me with this painting. Sorry. Yeah, so yeah, so yeah, this was kind of like a thing that I was experiencing whilst making these paintings. And one of the thoughts that I was also thinking about was the fact that, was the fact that I was beginning to learn what it, or kind of disrupt, sorry, something's happening with my thing at the moment. Just bear with me. Yeah, so sorry about that. So I was kind of seeing how the importance of making portraits, it wasn't just about, how do I explain it? It wasn't just about depicting or making it look like the person. It was more about the journey towards the end product. So through conversation, through dialogue, through exchange of words, because again, we weren't in the same space, but we were sharing space because we were having conversation. And it just it allowed me to see that I wanted to invite them to just come in as they were. I didn't say that they should wear particular clothes or anything like that. And even when I did try that with someone, it was funny, it didn't quite work. And that was okay. And I was happy with the fact that I'd learned that, because it meant it reinforced more the fact that I just want them to be themselves when I'm painting them. And these paintings kind of just helped me, helped me think as if I was talking to history and saying, well, history, why did you make paintings of women, for example, and they weren't speaking? They were just sitting there and you were just painting them based on how they looked, as opposed to them bringing themselves to the image. I started to think about the fact that this was, in a sense, life drawing, and an opportunity for me to paint from life as somebody. I didn't make them stay still. They kind of was free to move around and do what they wanted to do in that time. And it made me kind of just think about just the fact of breaking barriers, and it not necessarily being rich or famous people like in the past who would get portraits. It would just be everyday people being painted. So section 3. Oh, is there some more? I can't remember if I still have more. Thank you. So section 3 is just kind of talking about diversity and unity, and kind of interweaving all the things that I spoke about in terms of identity, and in terms of how people see us and how we see others, and how we interact as a result of that. So Lindsay, if you can move to the next slide. Thank you. So I decided to put this series all together on one page. And I'm just going to read the scripture from where I got the title from. So Lindsay, if you could move it back to the paintings of all six, please. Thank you. So I'll read it whilst it gets back onto the screen. It says, "But you are a chosen race." Well, this is from 1 Peter 2, verses 9 and 10. "But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness and into his marvelous light. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy." So when I was thinking about this title, a royal priesthood, I thought about just humanity generally, and we all know that, you know, in the midst of last year, there was the health pandemic, of course, but there was also what people had been calling like the racial pandemic. And this was quite an interesting kind of time, I know, for everybody. And I know for me, the way I process things best is through painting and through writing. So in this time, I was kind of thinking through mainly, I suppose, the sanctity of life and what that actually means and what that looks like. And I was also thinking about the church and and I don't mean my church specifically, I mean the church universal, and thinking about how it is a light and it is a beacon, and people should be looking to the church for what to do or how to respond or how to be. So in that time, I was really just kind of thinking, how do I process what is going on? And to some extent, I'm still processing it. I won't say I have a final answer or any resolutions or anything, but again, these paintings were made similarly, where I would have conversations with these women, but none of these women particularly I'm saying any of their like political stances or anything, but it was just an opportunity for me to kind of think about the unity that can be found in the church, and the fact that that there is beauty in the body. And by the body, I mean different ethnicities coming together, but one thing that unites them is Christ. And I thought that that was really a wholesome thing for me to grab hold to in that time. And it really allowed me to kind of just work through whatever thoughts and conversations that were being had in that time. So Lindsay, you can just scroll through the individual paintings, please. Thank you. Just so you can all see the names and stuff. That's actually another thing. I really do like to name the paintings after the women, even if I might put a little spiel at the front or at the end. I like to name them because, again, it does talk about identity. I think there's a power in knowing that this in itself is a document. It is something that will probably last beyond myself. And so it's definitely something that I just thought it's important for them to at least have names, because then you can identify them. You can say, this is this person, this is how this person might have looked or might have been. So I thought that I definitely, and I still do, I think it's important to kind of name my portraits because of that. So just as a way to kind of round up, I was just kind of thinking about just generally in terms of the themes that I explore. It's definitely to do with dignity and sanctity of life. Definitely thinking about the fleetingness of life as well, especially given what's happening even now. We really, as human beings, are beginning to really look inward and think, well, where's my hope? What do I stand on? Where will I go from here? All of these kind of questions are really important, and those are are questions that I think about quite a bit, and I think of more so when I'm painting portraits of people, because these bodies are vessels. They will pass away too, and so it's kind of thinking, going back, rounding off and going back to where I started, me being a sojourner, or like, it's like we're walking through, you're passing through life. And so for me, I know where my hope is, and I suppose my question that I want people to be thinking about when they see these portraits is, well, what's this lady thinking about? What's this lady's heart anchored on? What is she centering her truth on? How does she conduct herself during this trial or this situation? Because that begins to kind of build in the intellect of the woman. You start to think of her as someone who thinks, who actually has thoughts, ideas, longings, desires, and it just fleshes out the person more. So it's not just an image that you're looking at, you're kind of being presented with another presence, another person. So yeah, I think that kind of goes full circle back to the whole sojourner and thought process that I wanted you guys to think about whilst journeying through these paintings. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Gayle. Just such a privilege to see your work and to hear your story. And now we're going to transition into a time of Q&A. So if you have any questions, and you can type them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask Gayle. I might go ahead and start with a question, and then I can, as people are sending them in the chat, if that's your preferred way to do that, I can read them off to you, Gayle, and yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay, so yeah, my question is, what are some of your earliest memories of painting? I'm really curious about like how you got started with all of this and how your interest really grew.
That's a good question. Earliest memories of painting was probably just primary school. I think I was always known in primary school as the artist, as the person who always draws. So I would say definitely primary school, but even with that, it's quite a flickering memory. So a more tangible memory would be secondary school, even though I know that I was painting definitely in primary school. So secondary school, yes, I was painting, and I only was properly starting to doing portraits at GCSE level. And with that, actually, it's kind of funny. One of my friends who I painted for a new series I'm working on, she kind of reminded me that I never used to want to paint anyone before. So I find that kind of funny because that's all I do now. But yeah, so earliest memories, probably like primary, secondary school.
There's a question in the chat from Saziso. I hope I pronounced her name right. In terms of your painting style, who or what has inspired you?
Thank you for your question. Who's inspired me? There's loads of people that have inspired me. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking of Jordan Castile, thinking of Amy Sherwood. I actually did write a list, actually. Lynette Yadon Botchway as well. Who else? Kerry James Marshall. Sonia Boyce, as I mentioned, Claudette Johnson. Loads of portrait painters, primarily, because of their storytelling, because of their mark making, and because of their ability to express their thoughts or their themes. So yeah, those people are. Oh, Alice Neal, definitely Alice Neal. Kind of similarly as well, because she kind of did what I like to call citizen journalism, and I think this painting kind of is like that in a sense, because she would invite people into her living room, and then she would paint them whilst having a chat. So it's kind of similar to what I'm doing, but just virtual. So definitely Alice Neal, she's amazing.
And sorry, it was me that asked the question. Thanks for answering. I just wanted to kind of like just elaborate as well. Like, how did you kind of come to the type of style of painting that you do now? I mean, have you always? I mean, I'm quite new to kind of to your work, but it'd be really interesting to kind of hear about how you came to the style that you paint in as well. Was that a journey in itself, or has your work always reflected that aesthetic?
Can I clarify your question? Are you referring to, okay, you did mention aesthetic. Do you mean in terms of like the medium, or do you mean in terms of how, like the methodology, like how I make the paintings?
Yeah, both, I suppose. Yeah, like the medium itself and kind of like how you create it, that kind of the physical process.
Thank you for your question. Yeah, so with acrylics is my primary medium. I like to use that because it's most easiest for me, I think, and the drying time is good. It kind of feels like drawing as well in a sense, because it's just like quick, because most of these paintings are done over a couple of hours on FaceTime, and that explains the answer about methodology. So I'm primarily making them over FaceTime over a couple of hours. So I kind of need it to be quick and fast paced. So I'd use like oil pastels as well. I'd use coloring pencils, just anything to just kind of get the person on the canvas or on the panel. And you asked, how did I kind of get to this? I think I would largely just say it was through practice, and it was through the fact that I was doing it on an MA course. So I had to kind of churn out the artwork, and I had to kind of find my style. But this style kind of came because of circumstance, because it was FaceTime. If we weren't working from home, my work would look completely different to how it looks now. I'm pretty sure. So yeah.
And are you happy with how it looks now? And do you think you'll stick to this style, or can you see it changing once you get more time to create?
That's a good question. I think I quite like this style. I do think it could change. I don't know. That's an interesting question, because I think sometimes I find refining a bit tedious. I quite like the looseness of just like the mark making. So, but I'll have to see that. I think with time, my process will definitely change. I think I was speaking to someone and they mentioned that when you look back on your work, it's probably going to look completely different to how, when I look back, as in like 10 years time from now, for example, it will look different to how it looks now. So yeah, I think it will probably change and evolve, hopefully for the better.
Thank you.
No worries.
Gayle, there's another question in the chat. How long does it take you to create a piece from the initial image to the end result? And what's your favorite part of the art process? That's from Sharon.
Hey, Sharon. It takes, okay, so the initial process, because everything, so literally I would start the panel. I've started doing this where I wouldn't start from like a white surface. I would start with yellow, and that will help me just already start to imagine the person on the surface. So I start with the yellow, and I would say, so with the series that I was making, Lindsay, you can feel free to slide through those ones, the Let Your Light Shine series, the smaller paintings. Those I actually told the people beforehand, I just need you to sit for about 2 hours, because I recognized they were at home, they had other things to do and stuff like that. So it would literally, I would tell all 12 of them, I think I was like 2 hours, start to finish. We're just gonna just do this basically. So it would just be oil pastels, and then I'll just get some watercolors, and then I'll throw on the acrylic afterwards. So around about 2 hours for the smaller pieces. The ones I was making in the studio, they were a bit longer because I had a bit more time to labor over it. So each session would probably be like maybe 4 or 5 hours. I think after 4 hours, I get a bit tired, and then I'll pick up again another time. So bigger pieces, definitely longer, smaller pieces, 2 to 3 hours.
There's another question in the chat from Guadalupe. She asks, are you planning on exploring any other genre apart from portraits?
Good question. Not immediately. However, I think work that I make myself, more meditative pieces, more just kind of, I think I heard one artist, his name escaped me now. He calls them mindscapes. I think I'm starting to do those without really realizing that that's what I'm doing. So just kind of painting just places that you can't really distinguish as like locations or landscapes or anything, but they're mindscapes of like places in my mind essentially. So I do those, but those are just kind of for myself in a sense. I don't know if I will share them. I think I've shared one, but or two. But right now, I think I lean most to portraiture. That's kind of just my area that I enjoy.
Another question from Michelle is, do you have any plans for incorporating storytelling and poetry more within your artwork?
Thank you, Michelle. Yes, I do. But I think that is part of me learning my process about how to actually storytell through portrait painting, because it's something that I really do want. It's called visual language for others who may not know. Like, just I really want to strengthen my visual language. Like, what am I trying to say in my portraits? I really want that to come out more. And somehow I think words, especially because I do use words quite a lot I journal and I write, so it would be a very good thing to incorporate. I'm still trying to work out how to do that, but I suppose more practice. But yes, definitely, to answer your question, Michelle, thank you.
Another question is, what advice would you give a young teenager who loves drawing and painting?
Thank you for your question. I would say keep doing it, as in being consistent. Because I think consistency is still something that I'm learning now, knowing how to, if I know that if you know that you've got like a gift or a talent or skill, nurturing that skill by being consistent, setting yourself targets for small things to draw or things to paint or to sketch. Yeah, being consistent. Yeah.
There's a question from Edith. What do you think, if any, are the challenges that upcoming artists may face in the era we're in, and what advice would you give them moving forward?
Can you repeat that again? So I just have a bit of to think.
Wait, sorry, did you ask for me to repeat it?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
What do you think, if any, are the challenges that upcoming artists may face in the era we're in, and what advice would you give them moving forward?
I think there are many challenges. Thank you, Edith, by the way. I appreciate the question. I think she's one of the people I painted, if it's the right Edith. I'm not looking at the chat, so I don't know. Yeah, I think some challenges would be things like, I don't know if it's really a challenge though, because I was going to say visibility, but I think visibility can be, you could push through that through things like social media and getting your work out there and speaking to people and your friends and your family. And then it's not just your friends and family, it becomes other people who are interested in your work. So I think challenges come when, I suppose, you put yourself down or you set yourself back and not think that you have room or space. There's always room for you. There's always space for you. So I think it's that kind of belief from within that might help. What other challenges? I think, there's the whole thing of, having a seat at the table. And I would say, if you don't find a seat at the table, just create your own table, basically, and team up with other people who are making work similar to you, and grow together and thrive together. So I don't know if that answers the question, but those are the things that I was thinking about as you asked the question. Thank you.
Another question is, what role has religion played in your journey as an artist?
Thank you for your question. Big role. I think big role because I realized that this gift is not my own. It's a gift that's been given to me. And though I've had different avenues of life, done broadcast journalism, been in education, done so many different things, this gift has always been something that has been in me and that I've always used. So it has the role of religion. Well, it's faith really, and I think it's been most grounding for me as well, recognizing that, once again, as I mentioned before, that I'm a vessel that ought to be used. And if this is the gift that's been given to me to be used, why not use it to the glory of God, and for the benefit of others? So having that really humbles me, because it allows me to think about things in perspective, and it allows me to have a focus as well, have a goal, the fact that, yeah, you want other people to see God's light shining, not only through me, but through the work. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Another question, and this is from Michael. I think you may have mentioned this, but do you have any particular female influences that aren't necessarily artists?
Oh, okay, good question. Yeah, I would just say the women in my life, primarily, definitely, because they all inspire me. They are all everyday champions. Recently, I was kind of seeing a lot of like Shonda Rhimes. I quite like her. She refers to herself as like a titan. She's really cool. Loads of writers as well. Who am I thinking of about writers? Yeah, key writers. Who else? Yeah, those are people that I'm thinking of literally off the top of my head, other influences. Maybe some more might come to me. Michelle Obama, of course. Yeah.
I love this next question. This is from Ebose. What role has identity played in your creative? And is that yours or the identity of the people you are painting?
Can you just read that again, please, Denise?
Yes.
Thank you.
What role has identity played in your creative process? And is that your identity or the identity of the people you are painting?
Okay, that's a good question. Identity. Well, it depends on how you look at what identity is, isn't it? Because everyone kind of has their own way of defining what identity is. For me, I would say my identity is firstly a daughter of a king, child of God. And so when I'm thinking about that, that's my inner being, that's myself. But then I move in this world, in this body, being a Black woman. So that's also identity that's on me as well. So these are things that I experience and I go through life with, and that's fine. I think that's to the glory of God. It's a good thing. So then when you ask that question, it makes me think that that's what I am then looking for in others who I'm painting. They don't necessarily need to be in a similar skin to me, but their identity, what's their values, what are their beliefs, what anchors them. I think these are the things that I kind of look for, in a sense, kind of like a like-mindedness. But then not always, but that does come to mind. So yeah, I think that's why I kind of describe these portraits as autobiographical, because though they are depictions of other people, they kind of also reflect me as well. And then widely thinking about it, because most of these women are Christian, it's talking about the church. So the church as believers, we all are one body, we all are united together, we all have one identity. So yeah, I think if that helps to answer the question.
This is a question from Caroline. Could you elaborate a little more on how you went about approaching your sitters? Did they volunteer?
Good question.
You didn't know them that well before painting them.
Thank you, Caroline, for your question. Yes, so I want to say twofold. It's probably threefold, but twofold. So I would start off by, okay, because I'm a portrait painter, I look at faces all the time. I'm always examining facial expressions, looking at gestures, looking at posture, just observing and watching people and how they are with other people. And so that's usually the first thing that I'm doing. I'm normally just looking and just thinking, this person might be nice to paint. And that literally, it would just be that. And then this is where I suppose the faith element comes into it, because then I would probably write their name down, or I would just like pray about it. And I'll just be like, okay, God, I want to paint this person, but I don't know when or for what series or body of work, because I tend to work in bodies of work. So then I'll just, sometimes it might go to the back of my mind, but then other times it won't. And then it would usually be a, how you doing, how's it going? I want to paint you. And then I'll probably just like I'll message them, or usually it would be a voice note. I'll send them a voice note and say, are you available for an opportunity for me to just paint you over FaceTime or video call? And they will just kind of give me time and availability. I have had a few people who have said no, and I think some are probably on here, maybe like 2 people, but most people are most likely to say yes. So then I will just schedule them in, and then we'll have the sitting. So that's usually how it works. That's what I mean about twofold, because it's like I would see someone, usually I do know them, maybe it depends, there's different layers of knowing, but then I would ask them, and then I'll pray about it, and then I'll see where it kind of sits with what I'm working on. That's how it works. Thank you for asking, that's a good question.
Another question in the chat is, well, there's a comment to go with it. As you told us, your art is full of emotions, personal feelings, and statements. Will it be a medium to clear your soul and spirit?
Thank you for your question. Actually, I think I was meant to mention this. Lindsay, do you mind scrolling to the painting of Liz? It's called The Jubilant Liz. Because actually in our conversation, she actually mentioned to me, I think that's probably the only painting that I did outside of the course. But
that one is, Gayle?
Sorry?
Sorry, do you remember where that one is? Is it before this or after this?
It's at the end of this section, the last painting at the end of the section. What was I saying? Yeah, sorry. So I painted her at the end of the course, shortly after the course. And she was kind of saying to me, this must feel like therapy in a sense, kind of talking, having these exchange of conversation and talking whilst painting, this painting. And I thought, yeah, that's actually true, because when I reflected and I thought about all the conversations I was having with people, there was a lot, there was loads, it's conversation. Conversation can be heavy, it can be weighty, you can talk about deep things or trivial things or stressful things or easygoing things. So it was definitely, I was able to see different emotions, different feelings, and even my own self experiencing those things as well whilst making the work. So yeah, I would definitely say that these paintings kind of encapsulate those things. I don't know if I answered that question properly, but yeah.
There's a question from Mary. How do you stay encouraged and motivated?
Thank you, Mary. I think whilst I was making these paintings and my most recent works as well, one of the ways I've stayed encouraged and motivated has been through the conversations I've had with them whilst painting them. So even up to maybe half an hour before the call with the person who I'm painting, I might not be feeling up for it or whatever, but with painting, it is work. So you kind of have to just work through that, and that helps me to, what helps me to stay motivated is actually the conversations I'm having whilst the painting is done, because I often realized that once the conversation was done, I wouldn't want to go back to the painting. That would be it. The painting will be done. I wouldn't have any more energy to kind of get through it and finish. So yeah, that's what motivates me, that's what encourages me, as well as, I suppose, just the importance of having these faces documented in portraits, and celebrating my community, everyday women. So these are things that kind of motivate me and keep me going, and yeah, and now allow me to think as well that, there are going to be many sojourners and many pilgrims after me, and I would want them to see these people, these women who were full of faith and who lived their lives as unto the Lord. I think that would be an encouragement, not just for me, but for those who are to come. So yeah, that's what motivates me as well. Thank you for your question.
I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat, but if anyone has any other questions, yeah, feel free to send those there or turn your cameras on. I think, well, Gayle, it's up to you, but I think we have a few more minutes if you're down to answer more questions if people have them.
I'm here, I'm available. If not, we can also round up. That's all good.
Oh, okay. There is a question from Gabby. Oh, she sent this earlier. I didn't see it. Gayle, your paintings have, sorry, I'm trying to scroll, have really evolved to become great. Bold colors, wonderful expression. What I notice, however, is that most of your paintings look unfinished. And then people care about my observation. So I don't know if you had any comments about that one.
Yeah, I would just say kind of, it just follows on from, thank you for the question. It just follows on from what I was mentioning in terms of, it kind of does make me think about the fragility of humanity as well, anyway, in the way that the paint is kind of loose. It's like, it does kind of encapsulate that moment that I had with that woman at that time, and to refine it or to kind of go into it further, kind of maybe loses the kind of meaning or message or the idea that I'm trying to give in the portrait, which is you know, she's here one moment, she'll be gone the next, so treasure her while she's here, kind of thing. So there's loads of underlining kind of meanings that kind of flow through it. And so, yeah, that's what I would say to answer that question. I hope it does answer the question.
There's another question. How many paintings have you done the most in one single day?
Oh, ooh, how many, as in how, like multiple, how do you mean? Like how many paintings have I actually done in one day? Actually, I think there was a day where I did do 2 people at once. I think it's on the slides. It was Michelle Kike and it was Davina. I did those both on one day. Yes, so probably 2. And to be honest, I get exhausted. So I think after that, it's a bit much. So yeah, probably about 2. That's off the top of my head from what I can think of. Thank you for your question.
Are there any other questions? Oh, here's a question from Malcolm. What is next for you in your practice?
Thank you for your question, Malcolm. What is next for me is, well, I've got a series behind me that these are some finished paintings. This is from a series that I'm working on called God is in the Midst of Her. It's going to be about 11 to 14 paintings. So that is what I'm working on. And actually, to be fair, I've kind of basically finished it. So I'll be kind of exhibiting it similarly to this actually in the next few months. I've also got a few exhibitions that I'm going to be in. One is in April at UCLH, yeah, the hospital basically. Some of my paintings will be there, as well as some group exhibitions I'm going to be doing later on in the year with some of my peers from the course that I was on at Camberwell. So that will probably, I think one is in November. Yes, so basically later on in the year. So if anybody did want to actually find out more or keep in touch, you can subscribe to my newsletter that I've got on my website. So actually, I think my website details and stuff is at the end on the last slide. Thank you for that question, Malcolm. You just reminded me about upcoming things. Thank you.
Another question is, where do you see your art calling home, both now and in the future?
Calling home? What does he mean by home?
Hi, Gayle. It's Matt.
Hey.
Hi. My question is basically, where do you see your art hanging? Is it going to be in the church? Is it going to be bought by different people? Are you going to keep it? Like, where is the final resting place, quote unquote, for your work?
Good question. Thank you, Max. Well, I would love for people to own my work in terms of having it in their homes. I think there's such a value in people just seeing portraits of women like this in their homes, and it's a good way to kind of also pass down. I think that's an important thing in terms of portraits, in terms of just investing in art that you enjoy and you like. Ideally, of course, museums, galleries will be a blessing as well. But primarily, yes, if people can acquire the work, that would be lovely. It would be good because it just gets out of my room and outside into the world. So yes, thank you for asking that question, Max. I appreciate it. If you wanted to do all that as well, everybody, that's also, you can just email me and there's more information for that as well. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Gayle, for answering all the questions. And thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. Hope you all enjoyed seeing Gayle's work. And you can follow her on Instagram and you can check out her website as well. So thank you all so much again. Hope you have a
Thank
wonderful
you all so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Mhm.
Yes, thank you, Gayle. Such beautiful work. We're excited that we got to host you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am Art House. Really appreciate you guys just supporting me on this. I appreciate it. Thank you so much to the team. You guys are amazing. Thank you, everyone. I'm now seeing the comments. Thank you.
Yeah, I was watching the comments come in. You should definitely read through them because they're
Thank you
lots
for doing that. I appreciate it.
really great ones. Yeah.
Yeah, Lindsay, you can pause the recording now.
Oh, yeah.
I know.